But there was a huge row in the mid-90s about outing people, and people like Peter Tatchell and OutRage were very much in the business of forcing people to come out, and shaming people into coming out and challenging people who they thought ought to come out, which led to some very absurd situations at times. Stonewall was very clear. We wanted people to be visible, but we wanted them to be visible as happy lesbians and gay men. We did not want them to be visible as miserable people who'd had to be dragged out of a closet. And people, gay shame was a serious thing. People were being outed in the News of the World, which was the big weekend newspaper then. They were being outed by OutRage. There was a bishop who apologised publicly for his life, even though nobody had particularly known he was gay. It was just, that's not how you want people to come out. We wanted people to show that, as the slogan in the 21st century went, things get better. Not things get worse and you're really unhappy and semi-suicidal for being dragged out of the closet.
The tabloids were effectively at war with the LGBT community. They saw us, like the government, as the enemy within. So you'd have headlines like "Puffs in the Pulpit," whereby, I think it was the Sun or the Express, tiraded against gay clergy within the Anglican Communion. Puffs in the pulpit. This is like barroom, yaboo, thuggery language, not the language you expect from a national newspaper. I think the Express had a scaremongering headline in response to the AIDS pandemic: 1 million will die. No scientific evidence whatsoever, but completely hysterical. It was almost day after day after day, there were newspaper attacks upon LGBT plus individuals, organisations, or the community as a whole. And the consensus among a lot of newspaper editors was that, we were not respectable, we did not deserve respect, and that we were fair game.
The media had been absolutely horrific about lesbian and gay people through a large chunk of the well, it had always been pretty awful, but it was actively attacking us in the lead up to Section 28. And people who were lesbian and gay and who were involved in the straight media were completely in the closet. I remember there was a Media Against Section 28 group, and the only out journalists from the straight press were theatre reviewers like Nick de Jong, who were there. The guy who was the editor of the Mail on Sunday magazine was one of us, and indeed he later died with AIDS. But he was completely in the closet at the Mail. Couldn't have dreamed of coming out. I mean, it must have been hell to be part of that, actually. So the media had not been helpful. But it was interesting that Stonewall didn't present in the way that they had been portraying us as double denim, badge wearing, hitting people over the head with the placard people. They couldn't really say that about people like Ian McKellen and Michael Cashman and Matthew Parris, who was a journalist. And suddenly they started to take us just a wee bit more seriously, and it's really interesting the way that they started to calm down. And yes, there were still lots of really stupid pieces, including in The Guardian, where I distinctly remember a Polly Toynbee piece saying that gays have brought Section 28 on ourselves by trying to be too pushy about children. It was like, but they started to come round, and over the next decade they came round more and more, and it was all part of the establishment. There was actually, I think there was a bit of a sense of shame for Section 28 from a lot of people. They realised they'd gone a bit too far.